All right, good evening. I would like to call to order this committee of the whole meeting for June 8th, 2021. Can I get a motion that the agenda for the June 8th, 2021 committee of the whole meeting be adopted as presented? Councillor Chenard will make that motion. Any questions or concerns? All in favor? Motion passed. Can I get a motion that the minutes for the May 25th, 2021 committee of the whole meeting be adopted as presented? Councillor Wilkinson makes that motion. Any comments or concerns? All in favor? Motion carried. We have no delegations, moving on to reports from staff, infrastructure and planning. We have an MCCAC grant submission for Griffis Park. Welcome, Ms. Spires.
Good evening, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me okay. As you can see before you is just a little report explaining some information about, I guess, some new and changes that we're looking at for the Griffis building. Our initial plan was to just replace the furnaces and add air conditioning. Upon further assessment, I guess, of the existing system, we found significant limitations, especially in regards to just making it the most efficient that we could. So Brendan Rayom and myself have identified the Recreation Conservation Energy Program as a really good opportunity for us to make significant upgrades to the Griffis facility and to the lighting and the HVAC system. If we are successful, like if we go ahead with those applications and are successful, the existing budget that was originally put forward for the upgrades would actually cover the percentage that we need. So there would be no extra cost to the taxpayer, but we would have a significant upgrade in that building. So I guess what we're doing is just looking for your blessing to move forward with these applications.
All right, any questions or concerns? Councillor Chenard and then Councillor Curry.
Thank you, Tanya. Yes, by all means, as far as I'm concerned, you're good at getting grants. There's no extra cost. Move forward. The one question I had for you, how's the project coming? When do you anticipate possible move-in date?
Through the chair to Councillor Chenard, we are definitely falling behind what we had originally anticipated. And a lot of the reason for that, I guess, is the delay in getting these inspections done and working towards this opportunity. And so it's definitely delayed us because until we know what we can do, I guess, in terms of the HVAC systems and the lighting, we can't move forward with the rest of the project because this putting this system in would actually mean completely reventilating the whole building because it would go up in the rafters rather than using the in-floor heating system. So this is kind of the next step before they can get a lot more done.
Councillor Curry and then Councillor Byron.
Thank you. Just through the chair, I think it's great. I'm excited. Anytime we can do more without spending any more money is a good day. My only question is, what's the plan if we don't get the money?
So through the chair to Councillor Curry, our plan is basically then moving backwards and saying, what can we do with the budget that we have? We'll do the best that we can. We'll do as many upgrades as we can, but we would have to leave the in-floor ducting and we would just simply be able to change out the furnaces.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Councillor Byron.
Thanks. Through the chair to Ms. Byers. Thank you very much for looking into the grant and finding grants. Our administration team is great at looking into these, so I certainly have a lot of appreciation for that, especially when it increases the efficiencies in our building. My question is, so if you, now that you're going to go ahead, I believe, and proceed with this grant, what's the timeline on finding out if you're approved or not, and how that will impact the plan going forward?
So through the chair to Councillor Beyer, we actually anticipate a fairly short timeline. This grant is more of a first come, first serve. The money is there and it's just a matter of meeting criteria. And I have to give huge kudos to Mr. Rayon because he has worked tirelessly on doing the calculations, making sure that, you know, we would meet the required specifications. And, you know, I do think we would be successful, and we're not necessarily, you know, 10 people putting in and only 2 getting the grant. It's more if you meet the criteria, you're very likely to get the grant money. And at this point, they've been extremely responsive. Any questions that we have, they've been really quick. So we're thinking like maybe 2-3 weeks, we could have an answer.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Through the chair, if you're looking for blessings, certainly you've got mine. I just think it's such a forward way of thinking if we can get these environmental concerns attended to. So thank you for preparing this, as well as with the assistance of the engineer. I really appreciate that. And just while you're here, you dried out and warmed up after serving breakfast all morning. Really appreciated that part too, so thank you.
Through the chair to Councillor Wilkinson, yes, I have warmed up and dried out, and I will tell you it was really nice to have an event, even though it was not the way we would typically do it. The seniors were really appreciative. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Any last questions or concerns? All right, I believe everyone is in full support. You have our blessing, and yeah, I want to share everyone's praise for going after these grants, and administration is great at doing that. So we really appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to gymnastics club tax exemption request. Hello, Mr. Passi.
Good evening. So we received a application again from the Edson Tumblers Gymnastics Club for getting their property tax exempt. So, excuse me. I believe last year they came and did the same thing for the property they are currently in. They're looking at moving properties and looking to get this the property that they'll be moving to exempted from taxation. The reason this has to come before council is because they're hoping to get that done fairly quickly and fairly soon. There's a few moving parts before that can happen, but it's a matter of kind of how council wants to approach this at this time. In the memo that I provided, there's a couple of options where council can approve the taxation exemption immediately for the place they want to move into. Or you can approve it to take effect in the next taxation year, which is then following more the guidelines of the municipal affairs exemption guidelines. And then depending on that, there's also the property that they're currently in. We are able to prorate the taxes for the new property based on what they have, what the rest of the year looks like, if we're halfway through the year, let's say, and then also prorate back on the previous property to make sure the town receives the most amount of that revenue that we need to receive to run operations. Because the tax notices have gone out already, that's where we look at if it's going to be exempted now. Our recommendation is to prorate both sides to decrease that net loss based on where those properties taxations amounts are for this year. We're looking at if it was to take effect, let's say July 1st, we're looking at about a net loss of $1,300 or so, which would have to be written off. So I'll leave that at that and answer any questions you may have or for discussion.
We'll go with Mayor Zahara and then Councillor Beyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through to Mr. Passi. I'm very happy to see that one of our programs here in town is expanding and growing. And with what has been going on over the last year, I think we should grant this exemption immediately on a prorated basis on both sides, as you've recommended. I think it's really important that kids have these opportunities, and especially with what's going on today with COVID. So I'd be in support of that.
All right, Councillor Byron.
Thanks, through the chair to Mr. Passi. I also share the mayor's feelings on this. I would prorate it on both sides to the date that they're going to be moving in, and then maybe just give them a reminder that when it comes due next time to try to be on time a little bit, if that's helpful. But absolutely, I think that this is a necessary thing for the kids in our community. Thanks.
All right, any other questions? Oh, Councillor Chenard.
Thanks. Through the mic, I echo what the previous two members said, that I'm all for it. Just a clarification. So obviously the Edson Tumblers, they rent this location. So therefore it would be the landlord getting a tax exemption, and therefore they can lower the rent. Am I understanding that right? And it looks like they're just going to expand and take over the whole building. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Chouinard, it is the landowner that receives the exemption. There is some documentation, so the tenants may submit the application, but there's some documentation they have to include for it to move forward, in the lease and a letter from the landowner stating that they are aware that they are looking to receive this exemption. And so we can't obligate the landowner to not pass on those taxes, but I believe that would be something that the club would be looking for in their own negotiations with the landlord.
Anyone else? Councillor Curry.
Through the chair, that actually Councillor Chenard did ask the one question that I did have, just knowing, is this a new landowner then, or they're just expanding the building?
Through the chair to Councillor Curry, this would be a separate property.
Okay. Okay. I am in full support, and also the prorating that you have recommended, and sooner the better.
All right, I also am in full support of the prorating both sides. Is there any other questions or concerns? I believe, oh, yeah, go ahead, Mr. Passi.
Through the chair to council, we'll bring this back then once we have all the documentation from those who need to provide it. That will include then the exemption, and then also to write off taxes then.
In a council meeting.
Correct.
Okay, excellent. Moving on. Provincial downloads and funding cuts information item.
Good evening, Council. I'll take this one. A little while ago, we were instructed to look back and over the last sort of recent time and see what things that have been downloaded to the municipality from the province, or things that have changed that that the municipalities had to take over, that addition to our taxes, etc. So going through our different departments, we've come up with the list that was in the memo here. So as you can see, we have the grants in lieu that has chopped by about a half. This year it's actually around $90,000. We have to get that from taxation. That's actually part of the deal. They tell us we must collect that money from the rest of your taxpayers. So that's obviously was added on to the rest of our taxpayers have to get that. The fine revenues we know about, they used to take 26%, now they're taking 40%. This was requiring us to now pay for criminal lab work. That was a new one that hit us. This year, 16.5. Parent Link program was ceased. The hazardous household waste that has been talking about, we're not sure of those numbers yet. Also on the capital side, MSI funding, we're losing, it's changing over to fiscal framework funding. Overall, that will have us receiving about $500,000 less than we have in the past with MSI and the what used to be called the basic municipal transport grant as well. And then also within the for Municipal Reserve for subdivisions, they've remove that ability to have an additional 5% for 30 units or hectares of developable land. So they were the ones that we've come up with that are sort of downloaded to us immediately, but there's also some regulatory requirements that are coming our way as well, sort of into the future. So we're going to be doing a separate report to bring that back to you at a later time.
Right. Any questions or concerns? Councillor Wilkinson and then Councillor Byron.
To the chair, you know, we pride ourselves in being very transparent, and I'm hoping that somewhere we can sort of publicize these facts so that the taxpayers are aware of them. When their taxes go up, I think they really need to realize part of this is the reason why their taxes have to go up in any given year, and where everything is being downloaded to. I mean, the old saying goes, there's only one payer and it's the taxpayer, but at least I'd like them to know that we're getting extra things downloaded to us as a town.
Councillor Byron and then Mayor Zahara.
Thanks. Through the chair to council. When I saw the numbers here, I had a rough calculation in my head, but this is about $1 million a year, and just ballparkish. That's just not 1 year. That is this year and next year and the year after that and going forward. Like, it's absolutely unbelievable, really, how much downloading they've done, and without consultation or what they prefer to call consultation. I think we need to do more. I think we need to talk to our local municipalities in our region and find out if they're in the same boat. I'm sure that they are in a similar boat as we are. And I think we need to do more to talk to our MLAs and to the government officials that are in charge of these programs. And as Councillor Wilkinson mentioned, I think we need to let our taxpayers know as well, because this is something that, that it affects them, it affects us, it affects everybody. And not only did they decrease the funding, but then, with the household hazardous waste program, it's, I would love to ask the minister, so would you prefer that to go in the creeks and the rivers? How would you like us to deal with that? If you want to pass this on or take this financial obligation off of yourself and put it onto us, then how do you feel about the environment? Because it's, in my mind, completely unacceptable what the government has done. So, but administration, thank you very much for gathering all this information. So good job on that.
Mayor Zahara.
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Bittner, and the rest of the team for putting this together. On the operational side, you're looking at a 5% increase to cover some of those costs, and that's significant when you look at our actual tax increases over the last 3 years. We would have been near or under zero without these increased costs, or we would have been able to provide higher levels of service. So there is immediate impacts to our residents and our businesses. As I mentioned, when we were talking about the hazardous waste program, these are backdoor government downloading policies that the Minister of Justice, for example, keeps saying he has not cut policing, but he actually has, because fine revenue goes directly to our policing costs in our municipality. And looking at those numbers, that's 2 to 3 less police officers a year if we wanted to be neutral in terms of revenue versus expense. So I certainly would be supportive of putting some communications together, whether that's a mail out to our residents, in the newspaper, wherever. They need to be aware of this. Because unfortunately we get the hits and the blame for tax increases, but it's coming from our provincial cabinet, who likes to finger wag at us all the time and saying that we're the irresponsible stewards of finances, and that's not the case. I'm thankful that we have an MLA that's really engaged and understands and is willing to have those conversations, but it's the provincial cabinet that's the challenge. And I think we're into some rocky roads ahead with what's going on with the provincial finances in this province. So I don't know if administration, CO Beveridge, if would be appropriate to include a pamphlet or some information in our utility bills, or if you have any thoughts on that, or Mr. Bethji.
Through the chair to Mayor Zahara, that idea of circulating information out to the residents is something that can be exceptionally helpful in sharing that information. So it's something that we can work on with our communications coordinator to look at, as far as with the utility bills and other methods as well. So, as far as being able to provide the information clearly and transparently, I think that's really important, and that's something that I think is valuable at this time.
Follow up, Mr. Mayor Zahara, and then Councilor Curry.
Yeah, just a further thought as you're discussing this. I would love to see a graphic of what are comparing it to our tax increases the last 3 years and the impacts of these changes into our funding formulas. Obviously, MSI is a little different. That's capital, but it still has an impact to our finances, because I think that would draw a really illustrative way of showing what things could have looked like if it wasn't for this government downloading.
Right, Councilor Curry.
Thank you to admin for putting this together. I know we've talked about this lots and just trying to get some clarity on how much we know it has felt like a lot of downloading. It's really nice to see it on paper. I agree with what everybody has said at the table. I think we really need to be transparent and start advocating. I think it's a conversation to have with AUMA, and we shouldn't be the only community advocating and putting packages together. I think this is something, if we actually want to hit the provincial government and have them think about it, it sure would be something if all of AUMA municipalities were providing this and providing packages, because I do think we've been hit hard and some other communities have been hit even harder. So I do think it's something, if we could discuss it at the AUMA level, to kind of get more of a universal approach from all municipalities.
Councillor Chenard.
Hi, actually the same thing. I'm echoing what most people are saying in the room. I'm agreeing with Councilor Curry. What we need to do is, they said they're replacing MSI. So what we need to do is lobby as the group, everyone. And then we're looking at this almost $1 million a year. So when we go for the more money, then we all got to push harder. So like the 500,000 we're losing. So it's almost $1 million a year. We need to push to get at least half of it back. So lobbying not only, and I agree, we need to get all the towns on their case, because you're 100% right, Mr. Mayor. Every time they turn around, you put on the news, they're blaming every town, city for virtually mismanaging money, but instead we're struggling to figure out how can we do these projects with less funding. So yes, we have to speak, and I believe our MLA is he's on our side, and he speaks well for us, but we could maybe send him a quick note to reassure, organize, because in his riding, we have several towns, like the 3 towns get together and write in a letter with our concern and get them to explain to us, like where you pointed out, they're not the shortening police, but yes, $300,000, you're right. That's 2.5 officers gone that we have to fund. So I'm agreeing with everyone in the room. Let's get after them.
Mayor Zahara, and then Councilor Byer.
So what I'll do is I'll start a conversation with our regional mayors group to see if we can get our regional partners on board with doing something similar, and I'll also contact our AUMA rep and Mr. Morishita to see if we can do something a little bit larger to hopefully engage, kind of like what we're seeing with the RCMP right now, with the dozens of letters coming forward from municipalities fighting against the changes the province is trying to do.
Councilor Byer.
Thanks. Through the chair to Council and Mayor Zahara. Thank you, Mayor Zahara, for taking that role to talk to the mayor's group and start that conversation with AUMA. I think that it's really important not only for their councils to, have that understanding, obviously, but if they can also be so forward and be transparent to their residents and posting that in their newspapers and ensuring that they all know about it, right? If it's only the councils of towns and municipalities that know this information, it's kind of hard to get that backbone to it. But if every single newspaper from every single municipality, put something in their paper about, or whatever media options that they had, how much downloading is happening, I think that can start a fire. So, and I think that, with something like this is too big to not start that fire, in my opinion. So thank you for proceeding with that, Mayor Zahara.
Mayor Zahara.
And I forgot to mention, I'll also connect with MLA Long just to give him the heads up. And I want to be clear that I think he's a very strong advocate for us. So I just want to make sure he's in the loop and know exactly what we're doing.
Right, I am in full support of making a graphic or a promotional piece for our residents, as well as the AUMA and the Mayor's Caucus or Mayor's Group as well. So full support. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for this information. I'm sure it wasn't easy to gather. All right, moving on. Do we have any questions from the media?
Yes, Adrian, you can go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. My first question, I have two questions. The first one is, when looking at that downloading of costs, it comes out to just shy of $1 million. I'm wondering what that translates to for our taxpayers. If I'm not mistaken, for every $100,000 is about 1% on our property taxes. Is that so this would be 10%? Is that fair?
Go ahead, Mayor Zahara.
Yeah, it's a little bit more than 100,000, but yeah, in the neighborhood of probably 9 to 10%.
Okay.
Ms. Bittner, do you want to jump in there? Can you give me a more accurate number? Because I know it's changed over the years.
Certainly, a 1% now gets us around, Mike Passi might be better. It's about 110, I think. But we usually just say the 100 to 1 is more of a visualization that people can see. But over the years, it has crept up to get us just a little bit more.
Okay, thank you. And my second follow-up question for the same matter is, could you explain, please, if you know what the reasoning is behind them limiting how much you can have in municipal reserve, like that 5% for subdivisions? I don't understand what the thought process is there.
Anyone want to take that?
Yeah, I would have to look into that for you. That was just one of the things that was on our lists. I don't know if we've been given that information. I'd have to check with our planning department and see if they had any other backup for that particular item.
Thank you.
My understanding, Adrian, was that this is part of their red tape reduction plan in order to make it a little bit more business friendly for developers. That's my understanding of it.
Okay.
And Ms. Tate, I'm not sure if you caught that those provincial downloads are about 50-50 capital and operating, more or less. So you might be interested in that fact.
Thank you. Yes.
All right. Thank you. We'll move next up on our agenda, unless there's any more questions from the media.
No, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks. Next up is a closed meeting session. Can I get a motion to move in camera? Councillor Byer makes that motion. All in favor? Motion carried. We'll see you in the in-camera session. Thanks. All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn this committee of the whole meeting? Councillor Chenard makes that motion. Non-debatable. All in favor? Motion carried. Have a good evening, everyone.